Hey everyone, welcome back to Returning to Basics. Today I want to talk to you about plant and tree tags. If you're like me, you've spent a lot of money and particularly a lot of time on your property planting things like, well, for example, we have a muscadine vineyard and I have 16 different vines right here in the yard that are producing for me every year. Unfortunately, I don't know what all those varieties are any longer because the way I identified them no longer works for me. I used a permanent Sharpie marker that I wrote on top of the T-post that I put in out there beside each one of those, and I created my wire and I hung my vines on them, trained my vines on them, and I wrote on top of the white part of the T-post, and I'll show you right here. It didn't work. Well, it did work. It worked for a year, maybe 2 years, but the sun has a way of taking this permanent Sharpie marker and not making it permanent. Another way that we have identified trees and plants are with things like this, with the old popsicle stick tongue depressor type material, the little plastic material that you can write on and stick down beside it, and these types of devices, these types of tags, excuse me. We've used these. Now these work really well in the garden every year. They work great in the garden because you're only talking about identifying something for maybe 6 months, maybe a year at the most, and then it's not going to matter. You can take it and you can erase it. In fact, we used to use something in our grocery store whenever I was a kid, back in the butcher shop. We called it a grease pencil. And it was a little pencil about that long, and you twisted the end and a little black lead came out of it, and it was a grease material, and you could write on anything white. You could write on these plastic tags, and I still have one of those today, many years later. However, unfortunately, I can't find refills for it. So whenever it goes, that's over. And so I really can't find them. I think you can find some grease pencils with the tear-off type part on the pencil, and it reveals the lead, and you can use that. But it's really not something that I want to use. I'm looking for something that's a bit more permanent. And I've discovered something recently that I wanted to share with you, and that is aluminum tags. I buy this from Forestry Supply, and I go online, and I'll leave a link down in the description for these. But I buy them 50 in a box, and it's $6.95. So these are about 13.9 cents per tag. But they're really neat, and what you get is you get a tag like this, and it's 7/8 of an inch wide by 3.5 inches long, and you get a little piece of wire to go in there in the middle, and you put them together like this, if I can get it to work. You put it in the holes there, and then you just twist it like this a time or two, and it won't come off. And then you can permanently affix this to whatever you're trying to identify. You take your pen, and I just take a plain ballpoint pen, and you write on them. And when you write on them, you end up with something like this. Blueberry. And so we have 6 blueberry bushes out in the yard, and we're going to identify them. And I'm looking up to see what kind of rabbit eye blueberries they are. Look back on our receipts and we'll find them. But we put out a couple of Santa Rosa plum trees, and you saw me do a video on them just a few days ago, and I'll link that in the description below as well. But you know, we just put those out last year, and believe it or not, we forgot what variety they were. We couldn't remember. We were thinking maybe they were blue damsons, but they weren't. They were Santa Rosa plums. We bought them at the local big box store nearby, and they're doing great and they're growing really well. But we realized the other day we had forgotten what variety they were. We had forgotten about our apple trees in the front, and there's a red delicious and a yellow delicious, and we'd forgotten that. And so I ordered a supply of these tags, and I did something that's a bit more permanent, and I like it because, as you saw earlier, when you write on things with those Sharpie markers, and by the way, there are other quote tree and plant tags, and I'm going to show you a picture right here. There's the kind that when you buy them at the nursery, almost everything we get comes with one of these tags right here. And they work really well for the short term. You write on them with your permanent marker, and you go out there and you see that it's a Chickasaw plum tree, or it's a Cowart muscadine, or a noble muscadine, or whatever. Well, as I shared with you earlier, I have a whole muscadine vineyard that has 12 plants in it, and I know what 2 of them are, just because I happen to know where they were planted. I know the rest of them in my vineyard are Isons, Supremes, and Black Beauties, but I just don't know which ones are which. I do know where the 2 Cowarts are because of the particular place I planted them. So that's why I wanted to share this with you today, because you may want to make sure that you can remember where your trees and where your plants are. Up at Dogwood Trace, I have 10 initial apple trees that I planted. 5 of them are McIntosh and 5 of them are Arkansas Blacks. If I didn't know where they were planted, I never would have known how to label them. And Teresa didn't know where they were at all. And so the other day I went up there and I put a permanent tag like this on every one of those trees. And so if I'm not around for some reason, she can go out there and find out what they are, or other people can too. Years later, someone can come by and identify that tree. And so my Chickasaw plums, my wild deer pears, my Mexican plums, my Yates apple, my royalty crab apple, my Robinson crab apple, and you see where I'm going? My Chinese chestnuts, my Dunstan chestnuts. Each one of those now are in fact labeled. And by the way, with a tree, you might want to use something a bit bigger than the little wire that comes with them. And what I've done is I've saved wire. Whenever we get poultry wire, it comes with lots of these. And this is a little bit bigger wire, and what I do is I keep a little pair of small cutters with me, and I make a loop about, that big, which is about 8 inches of material, and I snip it off, and I use that on these tags instead of this little thing right here, because the first thing you know, this will choke a branch. And whenever, by the time you put this together and you twist it like this, I mean, there's only about an inch left, not even the size of a quarter, to be able to go around the branch. And so you don't want to be hurting and stifling branches and killing branches. And so I make a pretty good loop for what I put on the trees. But wanted to take a few minutes and share that with you today and encourage you to spend some money. You can buy those on Amazon, you can buy those at Forestry Supply, and I'll put a link down there below. And they even sell them, I think, for around $13 for 500, so that ends up being like 9.75 cents a tag. If you need 500, I only needed about 100, so I paid $7, $6.95 for the boxes of 50, and that worked out for me real well. Hey, if you have tagged your plants and your trees some other way successfully, leave a comment below and let me know. Also, help us out by sharing this video with other people that you know who might benefit from it. Hit the like button. It helps us with the algorithm with YouTube so that other people can find it. And most of all, thank you for taking time out of your life to visit our channel and to follow us. God bless you and have a great day.